I am calling to order the City of Edina's Heritage Preservation Commission meeting. Could I please get a roll call, Emily?
Yes. Commissioner Pollock. No. Commissioner Cundy.
Present.
Commissioner Birdman. I didn't see him yet. Commissioner Nemo.
Present.
Commissioner Everson.
Present.
Commissioner Hassenstad. Not yet. Student member Maheshwari. Student member Lee.
Here.
And then student member Pronley. Let me see. Hold on one second. We have 2 attendees.
Rachel was on earlier, and Mark just texted that he's having trouble trying to dial in
Okay.
because I don't think we have a quorum with the presence. Because I think
Looks like Rachel's trying to talk too. I can't hear her.
yeah.
Okay, Rachel's here. I see that.
Rachel's here. Commissioner Pollock's here.
Okay. And then Chair Schilling.
Present.
Up and then Commissioner Birdman. Just logging on, it looks like. Michael, can you hear us? You're muted, but I think.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, now you're good.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
And then it looks like Commissioner Hassenstad just joined us. All right, I think that's everyone.
Okay. Very good. Do you want, Emily, should we take a few minutes to introduce? We have one of our new student members.
Yeah.
Student Commissioner Lee, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a couple things about you.
Hi, I'm Mike Lee. I'm a high schooler at Edina High School, and I guess I'm excited to be here.
Great.
Thank you. We are excited to have you too. What year are you, Commissioner Lee?
I'm a junior at Edina High School.
A senior. Okay. Welcome. We have had a great time with our student participants in the past, so we're excited to have you on board. Okay, the first order of business is to approve the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda? Commissioner Birdman moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Nemo seconds. Emily, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Pollock. She gave thumbs up. Okay. Commissioner Cundy.
Aye.
Commissioner Birdman.
Hi.
Commissioner Nemo.
Aye.
Commissioner Everson. Commissioner Everson, is that a yes? Yeah. Commissioner Hassenstad.
Aye.
Chair Schilling.
Aye. Okay, our meeting agenda is approved. The next order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from August 17th, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from
So moved.
August 17th meeting? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Emily, can we get a roll call? I also want to note that Commissioner Lundquist is now in the meeting. Can we get a roll call on approval of the August 17th minutes?
Commissioner Lundquist.
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock.
Aye.
Commissioner Cundy.
Aye.
Commissioner Birdman.
Hi.
Commissioner Nemo.
Aye.
Commissioner Everson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstadt,
Aye.
Chair Schilling.
Aye. Very good. We have our meeting minutes as submitted for the meeting of August 17th approved. We will now move on to an evaluation of the sketch plan. This will be a conversation about the sketch plan submitted for 4634 Edgebrook. And we have some representatives for that project. Would anyone like to begin this conversation representing this project?
TJ or Nate, do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, I can certainly introduce myself in the project. So TJ Badecki, principal with Murphy & Company Design. We are currently working with the clients. This is still somewhat in the conceptual design phase, but we do have a pretty good rendering idea of what this house is going to look like on the property here. I believe that everybody was given the renderings, correct, Emily?
Yes, they were. And TJ, if you have anything to share, I can make you a presenter as well, and you can share your screen if that works.
Oh, what's up? I missed the last part.
If you have anything, they were given everything that was submitted for the sketch plan that was included in the packet. If you have anything to share tonight, just let me know and I can change you to a presenter.
Nope, that's okay. That's everything that we have for right now. So as we've approached, and you might be familiar with this property, I believe about 6 months ago, we were in front of you for a previous design. Those clients had decided basically not to move to Minnesota, so they had sold the property, and we're working with the new owners on this design. A lot of what we had done in the previous design still rings true for how we approach the design of this house. So it is a full 2-story on the front, but obviously very careful with the massing approach. Didn't want the height to be too significant over the adjacent homes. When comparing it to the existing home that's on the site, we're about 2.5 feet taller at the ridge line with this new design. But everything on the front of the house is really designed to be a low impact, low horizon setting. So looking at the white brick, painted white brick, very classical traditional details on this house, colonial inspired. Definitely want to make sure that we get some of those details to ring through. And really just embracing the front yard space. You can see in the renderings that there's a lot of picture window and glass that's facing the street side, even more so on the creek side, but definitely wanted to embrace that streetscape.
Fantastic, thank you. Nate, did you want to add anything? Nate, you are muted.
Thank you. Nate with Streeter Custom Builder. As TJ said, we were here before you guys on the previous project. With this new project, we did explore turning the garage on this one. So we have explored that, and we've turned the garage so that the presentation of it from the street is not visible. And I know that was a point of discussion previously. We believe we've got a solution that we can work with on that front. And we have been in discussions with both of the neighbors to the adjacent properties in the beginning of this process. So I think there's good dialogue going among them. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate those things.
Thank you. Commissioners, do any of us need Emily to share the screen on this, or does everyone have access to the visuals on this? Everyone's got it? Does anyone have any questions or comments? Mr. Pollack?
Yeah, just a question. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. I switched devices. So the sort of the porch on the front, is that really a decorative space? I don't see any like doors. Excuse me, the second story porch, I don't see any doors leading out there. Is it really intended for decorative purposes?
That's purely for decorative purposes. There's no planned intention to have any access points out to that second floor. The main floor porch is something that the family is embracing. The main door, as you can see in the rendering, is located to the gable on the left side flanking. The right side gable is the mudroom entry, and then both of those spaces right now are planning on feeding into that front porch space. So You wouldn't traditionally, not, I should say, atypical to the traditional design. You're not walking onto the porch for the front door. You're actually walking past it. But it was something that the family wanted as far as a gathering space, embracing the front yard and the streetscape. Yeah, so that's the plan for that front porch.
Thank you. Do I have any other commissioners with questions, comments about this plan?
Chair, this is Commissioner Cundy. I have a question for Emily. I see in the on the parcel sketch, the overview, the garden shed that's included. What purview, if any, do we have over accessory structures on lots within the district?
It would be similar to if it's visible from the street, then you would have, then it would be reviewed by the Heritage Preservation Commission. Because this is coming in as a new house, you guys can ask questions and comment on those items. But if this were an existing home and they were adding a detached shed that was in the rear of the home and not visible from the street, there would be no review from the Heritage Preservation Commission.
Okay.
To speak to that garden shed briefly, what the homeowners are looking to do, so there is currently a 3-car side load garage. We do have a pretty minimal depth in there. It's about 22 to 23 feet clear right now. We do have some storage area in that garage, but the family was looking at possibly putting that garden shed for additional storage for bikes, for lawn equipment. There is the potential that as the grade falls away, that we might be exploring a pool, and the underside of that garden shed could serve purpose as housing all of the pool equipment to keep that out of the view. Still early on in the conceptual design phase for that piece, and it's still evolving, but we'll certainly have more as we get ready for the next submittal. But the intention of that would be a 1-story structure from the streetscape, and as the grade falls away, it might be a 1.5 stories to possibly a full 2-story on the backside on the creek side. Again, with that pool equipment to pool storage underneath it.
Commissioner Hassenstop, go ahead. You are muted.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little concerned that this sets a precedent for auxiliary structures, of which there's very few in the neighborhood. So I saw this right away, and it piqued my interest, certainly.
The garden shed, is that what you're?
Yeah, a 2-story garden shed is unheard of.
It would, Commissioner Hassenstop, it would be 2 stories on the creek side as the grade falls away. But from the street side, it would still only be a single story.
It's still 240 square feet, TJ. Like, that's bigger than some apartments.
Right, but it's still within the zoning requirements for Edina for the R1 district.
Do I have any other
No,
comments from commissioners regarding this shed?
This is Commissioner Cundy again. It gives me some pause as well. I'm wondering if there isn't a way that it could be incorporated on the back side of the garage so that it doesn't have, almost as if it's a 4th stall with alternate orientation. Yeah, I don't know that I feel strongly one way or another, other than to say that I kind of echo the concern about structures like that in the neighborhood. Again, I don't think that we see a lot of them, and putting one on a new build would give me some pause as to precedent as well.
I think maybe
Commissioner
the
Lundquist,
feedback could be
oh, go ahead,
that
Emily.
when they come forward with a formal application, that they bring renderings of what it would look like. Because of its location, could be visible based on grades and everything from Edgebrook. So if you request certain information on the way that shed looks or the way it's designed, from a zoning standpoint, that shed or anything like that would be reviewed for zoning standards at the time of the building permit.
Sure, and I did note that in in the couple of perspective pictures that at least I'm looking at from the packet, it's not included. It's that space on the property is just trees or shrubs in the rendering. I'm trying to get you a page number.
On page 8, and then the renderings on page 9.
Like the 3D kind of full color renderings don't show that there, and I think that would be valuable to see what that would actually look like sitting there on the property.
Absolutely. We will certainly be adding that to the formal submittal. This was just a time constraint and somewhat of a last minute add to the programming discussion. So we wanted to have a placeholder showing the intent of that structure, but we don't have a rendering for it yet.
Sure. So again, I would just say if there's a way to explore having that be beyond the garage and kind of hidden within the street profile, that would be much more appealing to me. I don't have a strong opinion per se, but definitely would want to see renderings of it when you return with this plan.
Commissioner Lundquist, did you have a comment?
I was just going to add, I'm very glad to hear the concerns, and this is the right time to raise them. I guess I would want to see height elevations and be very careful of from the street view what could be seen. But I wanted to, in defense, say there are some lots that support gazebos, sheds, and so I think we'll have to carefully look and have full information because it may or may not be something that we can comment on. While I appreciate the concerns.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hassenstab.
Hey, TJ, can you please speak to the general style of this home? Like, what are we going for and how does it fit into the other structures in the neighborhood?
The general architectural aesthetic of the home was derived from a colonial, the traditional 2-story split stair colonial. You can kind of see that with the split gables kind of framing out that front entry porch. Where we deviated from that colonial was just more of the internal layout. So you don't have that door on center. The door is actually shifted into one of the gable pieces. But a lot of the detailing here is somewhat of a refined, not simplified, but still traditional colonial home. The brick exterior, the white brick exterior plays into a lot of the other homes in the neighborhood that we've been looking at. We honestly took a lot of the positive feedback that we got from the last iteration with the HPC review for the previous home design on this lot as far as the material choices. And it just so happened that the new owners were looking for, somewhat of the same thing as far as the material selections went. But again, everything that we're trying to do here is keeping that roof pitch low, keeping the gables front and center, keeping a very balanced, symmetrical approach to the streetscape there. And then the back side, the creek side, is where we're going to have a little bit more fun with a little bit more asymmetry and kind of a meandering footprint that you can kind of see on the site plan and in the floor plans.
Thank you. Any more comments? Concern?
I have a comment. So thank you. I think we can tell that, or I certainly can tell that the comments and the feedback that we made last time were certainly considered in this new design. So, but just wanted to say that. Thank you for that. Just wanted to point out 2 things. You said that front porch, would not be accessed from the second level as far as being occupiable, but it certainly gives the illusion that it could be. And that's something that we have looked at in other homes in the district where we have not wanted to set that precedent. And so just maybe consider, is there anything you could do to make it not look like you would be able to occupy it? Because if you certainly aren't going to be able to occupy it, then that railing height certainly doesn't need to be as tall as it is, or maybe there's a way to, incorporate something else so it doesn't look like it's meant to be a deck off the front of because in the district, we don't really have occupiable kind of front balconies, essentially, that are that size. And then another thing to just consider is the scale of that window. I think it's in the dining room. Just that there's a way to break it into 3 separate windows. I think the scale of that feels a little disjointed in kind of the overall kind of scale of windows in the district. there's one window in a house on Country Club Road that's actually quite close to this, that every time I drive by it, it just kind of jumps out at me as just kind of being out of scale for the neighborhood. And I feel like this one might be even bigger than that one. But other than that, I think it really looks great.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think we looked at a lot of historical precedents for that plate glass window that's front and center on that front porch. We'll take a look at the size and see where exactly that fits within the scale of the home. I guess the question on the upper terrace, even though it's not accessible, you can see that we have a non-code compliant railing up there. So obviously that's something that kind of calls it off as not being an accessible space. But it is something that's important to the architecture of the home and fits the colonial traditional aesthetics. So I guess I'm a little confused on the not wanting it to look like it's an occupiable space when in fact a colonial home like this would have a 2-story porch, and that wouldn't be out of the norm.
But in the district, it doesn't. And that's so understood that perhaps a colonial house could and might have had this, but in the district, we just don't see that. So that's kind of the balance that we are trying to strike here.
Okay, duly noted.
Go ahead, Commissioner Pollack.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate everything that Commissioner Nemo just said. Especially the feedback that was put into this new design. I think we all had a strong reaction to where the garage was and the scale of the previous version of this. And to me, this seems a lot more consistent with the neighborhood, and it will fit in very nicely, I think, with the neighborhood, with feedback from the other commissioners. So I just wanted to give that commentary.
Very much
Commissioner Everson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just circling back on that front picture window. I mean, it might be just as simple as adding more divided lights. I think part of it, that the thing that throws your eye off here is that all the rest of the divided lights in the house are much smaller and kind of more rectangular and vertical orientation. Whereas that front window, they're all square and larger. You might get too busy by doing that without breaking the window up, but that could be a simple fix. But you guys know what you're doing, so you'll be able to massage that, I think, a little bit.
Can I comment a bit on that? So one of the things we looked at as part of the design process is exactly kind of what Commissioner Everson and Commissioner Nemo brought up in terms of that window in the front. And we studied this from a window standpoint. I think it might be helpful to have some precedent images to show you guys directionally how we came to that conclusion, because I think it ultimately it was represented in these historic homes, and it's a unique, I think it brings something unique to the project as opposed to being so I'm going to call it predictable. And when we saw it on these other houses, it really started to inform this in terms of a unique feature. So I would just ask that you'd be open to maybe looking at the precedent images and seeing if you come to the same conclusions that we did.
Thank you for the comment, and we will definitely take that into consideration. Does anyone else have a question or comment? Okay, I'm going to try to synthesize this. First of all, I will also reiterate the new design definitely shows the listening to our previous conversations about this property and taking in the nature in the design. I particularly appreciate you turning the garage. Going forward, I am hearing commissioners express concern about the garden shed, and we definitely need to see in your future submissions what that's going to look like from the street, if that's seeable. I did like the suggestion Commissioner Cundy made about perhaps maybe moving that behind the garage, because then it's not seeable from the street. And you might actually have some wiggle room to work with given that. The dining room window, we are hearing your you not wanting it to be a predictable design, but maybe this commission might actually be more apt to approve something that is predictable, since that is part of our job, is to create a cohesive presentation within the district. Let's see. Oh, and the front porch. This also plays into the conversation about setting precedent. We have had recent properties that we've given feedback to that did include front decks over the front entryway, and we've said no to that because that's we don't want the precedent set. And so this needs to be clearly a non-occupiable deck so that there's no confusion going forward with future projects that we are giving feedback to. Do you guys have any more questions?
This is Commissioner Cundy. I just have one more bit of feedback as I'm again looking at about the garden shed. As I'm looking at that top view again, I'm just thinking about standing at the street with these pie-shaped lots. I guess my concern is that visually with that garden shed occupying that space, there's from the street, as you know, if you stood back on the other side of Edgebrook to the whatever it would be north and northeast, it would just appear that the structures on this property occupied almost the full width of the property. So I as I've been listening to the other feedback, but looking back through these parcel plans, and I guess to put a finer point on my concern, that's where I sit with it. Not that such a structure or such space exists on the property, but if we line, visually that will line everything up across the property to where almost from property line to property line, we've approved, some structure or mass of building. So I just wanted to kind of put a finer point on that.
Before we wrap
Emily,
this, go ahead.
I just wanted to, Emily, can you clarify, just, it might be it is more of a zoning question, but if a house has an attached garage, are they allowed to build a detached garage as well? I mean, are we maxing out, I guess, is there an accessory structure that could be considered a detached garage, in which case, potentially the shed could get bigger and they would be able to do that. So I feel like there's, I feel like there's maybe I don't know, just wanting to ask that question about size of this shed. And if it could certainly be the size of a detached garage, then I think they're not over asking, I guess, is my point.
Mm-hmm. Lot coverage will come into play. Typically a lot of lots, especially in the country club district, run into lot coverage issues. Or if this were to become larger and to become a true detached garage, especially being located in the country club district, it would have to come towards you guys because it's constructing a new garage. So I guess it's kind of a little bit situational depending. But if it would meet all zoning requirements, I would have to see or have a little bit more information on how visible it is from the street, whether or not it comes before the Heritage Preservation Commission or not. But from a zoning standpoint, like if they're just looking, if it's not located in the country club district and they're just looking at building a detached structure, then it comes down to zoning requirements. Most of the time it comes down to lot coverage.
Okay, anyone else have any more questions for us? I hope this was helpful.
No, certainly very helpful, and we appreciate the commissioner's times. I think we've gained some very good feedback from this, and certainly know the direction that we need to take with the preparation for the full submittal.
Yes, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to our reports and recommendations section. Emily, are we ready for the 4100 West 76th Street? We've got Stephanie Hawkinson.
Yes, Stephanie Hawkinson is joining us tonight. She is the city's affordable housing manager. Stephanie? Welcome.
Thank you all. I appreciate you accepting me as a walk-on the last minute. An issue arose today for which we wanted the HPC's feedback. And due to the timing of this development that I will tell you about, we could not wait till the October meeting. So since 2018, the city's been working on a 70-unit affordable housing development located at 4100 West 76th Street. It did not come before you all before because in the winter of 2019, well, first of all, I understand that you don't review every development proposal that comes before the city. And this building was not on the radar as being historical. It's a relatively new building. It was a biscuit warehouse. And we had a third-party consultant do a historic review on it in the winter of 2019, and they deemed it as ineligible to be on the National Registry of Historic Places. So the history of the building was it was Flight Time Studios for a few years. From 1988 to 2003. It was a recording studio, and many prominent African-American artists did record portions of records at the site. The building itself was not deemed historical, nor is the use. However, there has been a lot of interest in the previous use. So, after 2003 and 2009, it was a music educational and training building. It closed in 2016, and then this building sat on the market for a few years. So Ann, a nonprofit developer, signed a purchase agreement to buy it in May of 2018, and they did that fall. And then the HRA acquired it in August of 2019, so a year ago. And we are moving towards closing in October or November. Last month, an interested party drove by the site and saw that the building was still standing. And even though this had gone through a 106 review at the state, and SHPO had issued a letter saying that it was non-compliant with the National Registry, this interested party wrote a letter to SHPO asking for the file to be reopened. This was unprecedented. It hadn't happened before. It was elevated to HUD. The local HUD representative didn't know what to do with it because this had never happened before this late in the game. So it went to national office. So they reviewed it in Washington, D.C., and then it was sent back to the SHPO office here. And on September 2nd, I received a letter saying that it did not upstand the litmus test and the threshold and the needs to be on the National Registry of Historic Places. So we received that letter on September 3rd. So it should be a done deal, except that this interested party still is pursuing this. The developer and the city have committed to, there was art in the building. On the ceiling, there are panels by Takumba Aiken, who is a St. Paul artist. And so there's these panels, and we hired the Midwest Art Conservation Center to remove and preserve the panels. So we had all the panels of these pictures removed. They are cleaned during art with the specifications needed for art, and they are being stored safely. Those murals, these small paintings, are going to be placed in the new building to honor and give homage to the previous use of the site. The building is also, this affordable housing development is going to be called the Sound on 76th, also to give a nod to the history that it was at one point for a few years a recording studio. Then another thing that we're doing to try to memorialize some of the history of the site is there's some panels in one of the old recording studios, and we're removing a section of those panels, and we are going to be placing them in the lobby of the new building. So the architects have been working on how to do that. We had at one point in the plans a public art piece in front of the building. The funders, because affordable housing developments require multiple funding sources, one of the funders said, no, we're not going to pay for that. That is not something that we do. That was the Metropolitan Council. And as these projects are run on such a tight shoestring that that was removed from the project. However, we've been working with the Edina Art Center, and we're going to try to find an outside non-housing related source of money to do an art piece on the front that would acknowledge that this was a recording studio at one point, and a lot of the primary artists that recorded there were people of color. So we're doing all these things to try to acknowledge the fact that this is a recording studio, even though it does not meet the litmus test of being culturally historic, because of the time frame, the fact that people that recorded there, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, are still alive. So it didn't meet any of the benchmarks for being listed on the National Registry. We still want to acknowledge the fact that some pretty cool things happened on this site. So today, Minnesota Housing and Hennepin County, even though they've done all their environmental reviews that went through this Section 106, as I stated, they wanted to say, they want Edina, the city, to write a letter talking about how we're going to memorialize some of the cultural history and see if the HPC approves of that plan. That is why I'm here.
Okay, so you are looking for a motion for this evening?
Yes. And I have a slide that I'm going to be sharing with the HRA on Thursday. See, this is another thing. Thursday, we have a public hearing with the HRA to sell the property to the developer. This is another reason why this was a walk-on so late. And I can, so you can see it in writing. I have a slide, if I may share my screen. So when you make a motion, you'll see it in writing, what our plan is to move forward. Excuse me, as I have some technical difficulties.
Commissioner Lundquist, go ahead and ask your question while
we're waiting, a clarifying question. Is the interested party wanting to buy the building or to prevent the rebuild of it?
The interested party wanted to have the city preserve the building. From an architectural, again, from a physical, here's a slide of what the building looks like. It started out as a biscuit warehouse. It was retrofitted to become a recording studio. It has been vandalized. There are holes all over the place, and it has been abated. So there's no electricity or water. The city, if we preserve the building, I mean, there's no significance in the building itself. It's functionally obsolete. And again, it was built in 1963. It has no real historical value. So that was what the interested party felt like the previous 106 review was flawed. And so she wrote a letter saying, I want you to reopen the file. And the file was reopened. They reinvestigated the research. They looked at all the research she did, and they said, you're not providing any additional information. We stand by our earlier claim. You know, to give some of the environmental 106 review highlights. So as I indicated, we in this past November commissioned Midwest Art Conservation Center to remove and preserve the artwork. In February, SHPO determined the building could be demolished. In June, a public comment period and environmental review started by the state. Minnesota Housing did that, and Hennepin County, because they're required to, because HUD funds were involved. In July, HUD authorized the release of risk share financing, and they do that only if they deem the building is not eligible for the National Registry. Then HUD releases their funds. And then in September, just last week, SHPO reaffirmed that it was an ineligible building. So what we want to do, and here's on this, you can see one of the pieces of art And so there are these little panels, they're about 1 foot by 18 inches or so, and there's a series of them. And so how we want to memorialize the cultural history is, again, renaming the building the Sound on 76th, remove the artwork and all the artwork depicts Black musicians, to clean, preserved, reinstall, remove the paneling from one of the recording studios that will be installed in the new building, and then we will seek, and I can't make promises that we're going to actually get the funding to be able to do a public art piece, but we are going to work really hard on getting the funding to do a public art piece that will be out in the front lawn.
Commissioner Birdman, go ahead.
Was there any consideration of some sort of plaque or something that has, when you're on where the panels are going to be done or whatever it is, that actually gives a small little historical reference to why this was significant and so on and so forth? Or is it just meant to be pieces themselves?
If there is a desire for there to be a plaque can be included.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and it might be more for Robert Vogel. I saw that he is in on the meeting too. But I understand that the building isn't designated as being significant, but kind of the recordings that took place in the building, that's a different level of historical significance. Is there a beyond kind of a building review, was there a cultural review of kind of what exactly was recorded? And maybe you touched on that. And, are there experts beyond kind of the built envelope of this that did weigh in on that? That's something I think is worth knowing, because it's beyond my scope of understanding.
Yes, indeed there was. And one of the thresholds was that the historical event needed to occur 50 years ago, and this was it was until 2003, so it was only 17 years ago, so it didn't meet that threshold, and that the figures that made it culturally significant had to be dead, and everyone is still alive.
Right, but I guess. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And so that has nothing to do with the building. So the building, I think they deemed early on was not historically significant, but there is a review on cultural significance, and it did not meet any of the thresholds for cultural significance.
But that still means it has to be within older than 50 years. And so I guess the question that would be interesting to have somebody weigh in on is, okay, let's project out 10 years, would this be eligible?
Another thing that they looked at was no full albums re-recorded there, only partial albums. And so that was one of the other things that was looked at. So in the reviews, it was all based on the cultural events that happened, all about the albums, who recorded there, what was recorded there, how much of each album was recorded there. That was pretty much the basis of the review.
Okay.
I have a question. So why are you bringing this to the Heritage Preservation Commission? Our general purview is dealing with the resources, the actual buildings. I mean, and it's been a pretty clear determination through the course of your reports that this building is ineligible. What I'm hearing is that there were definitely some important inside the building, but they seem to be more culturally relevant. Would it be more important to get a sign off from maybe the Human Rights and Relations Commission? Or are you bringing in this to us because this is the direction that the opposition is bringing to you, the historical side of this?
Thank you for that question. I am bringing it before. Why I hadn't brought it to you before was because the building was not viewed as historically significant. So that's why I didn't bring it to you before. Why I am bringing it to you now is because the other funders, Minnesota Housing and Hennepin County, wanted you to be aware of this and to give your blessing on how we plan to memorialize the cultural history. So I was asked to by the major funders of this affordable housing development to do that. In some places, when this goes through a 106 review, it encompasses both what happened in the building as well as the bricks and mortar of the building, and that the federal agency, which in our case is Minnesota Housing, would have approached you earlier on in the review process. They did not. And SHPO was like, okay, why didn't they? And they didn't for the reasons you stated. But now they're like, okay, you know, it's the 14th hour, but
covering one's behind and crossing T's and dotting I's. I get it. And
you know, that's one way to put it.
it is the way to put it. So it's sort of like that makes it pretty clear to me. I'll be bold. I used to be the chairman, so I'll just say it. That's what it is. I think what's interesting, I'll give my 2 cents on it, is that's why I asked about the plaque. I love the idea of being able to capture the panels and some of the elements that are then there. What I do find throughout the community, however, is if we do not have some sort of historical marker or whatever it is that gives at least some brief definition or why was it significant or whatever it is, it's just window dressing without a story. And so I would be supportive of this approach with the expectation that some type of historical marker that explains the general key tenets of what happened in that building, not the building itself, but in this general space. What's represented here, this is why we believe it's culturally and historically heritage significant for us to capture. So I'm just putting my 2 cents out there. I would be supportive with the marker to do that. Without the marker, I think yes, I know you're trying to cover the one side, but I think you could be more meaningful to not only the person who opposed this, but I think to the general nature of what I would like to see us as a community do. Whenever we have a story that we want to tell, which is what this is about, then we need to make sure we have some marker that tells it.
And I'm perfectly okay with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Birdman. Commissioner Pollack?
Yeah, so I have more of a procedural question, and maybe this is just a newbie question, but Emily, I don't know if we're being asked to take some sort of official action on this and it wasn't published on our agenda in advance, can we do that versus giving informal feedback?
Yes, I believe it's making a motion to kind of let Stephanie include that statement in the letter to them on behalf of the city. So I believe that we'd be okay with that.
It's a great question, though. Think about it this way, it's a motion to grant that, but it's still under the city, and that if someone really was against that, they could take it to the city council to review it and reverse it or deny it or whatever it might be. So it's really just sort of informing that as a city entity, we have some preview over that given the way that it's coming to us. We're taking that action up and then go from there. The one thing is that I'm assuming we approved an amended agenda that included this item on it. Yeah, so if you think about procedurally, Rachel, that's actually where we cover our obligation is to saying this came forward and we did approve that as an agenda item.
Okay, I didn't see that on my agenda, so, but okay. So was that the agenda that we had approved?
Yeah.
I see it on my agenda, so that's the one when the chair asked for approval, that's the one I assumed.
Okay, I must be looking at an old one then. All right.
Okay.
Commissioner Lundquist, go ahead.
Stephanie, do you have a prepared statement that you would like us to vote on with Commissioner Birdman's additional caveat, which I think is important, or should we draft the language? I think it sounds like we're ready to make a motion.
I have added to my presentation to the HRA that we remove the artwork depicting the musicians, and we'll place in the lobby and elsewhere of the new building with an explanatory plaque.
Would anyone like to make that? Go ahead, Commissioner Lundquist.
The only thing I was going to say, it may be nice to just start the memo saying that this does fall outside of our purview. We are pleased and supportive of the 3 items you're taking and suggest the additional measure. And if people agree, I move to that we adopt such language.
I have one question. Are you sparked a question there, Jane? Obviously the building's not significant, but has there been documentation of the existing building and photographs taken of the existing building? And I understand that it's not in the condition that it was at one point in time, but just if somebody ever wanted to, bring a sense of what it felt like in there, is there documentation, or do we know of pictures that? I don't know, that not that we want to curate that, but certainly the Edina Historical Society might want to know about that, just to make sure that we're not being aware of that, I guess.
Great question.
We have not done it to the extent that would probably take place if that were done formally for that purpose. When it went through the environmental review by the consultant to determine historical, both physical and cultural significance, the report did include multiple pages of pictures and has a whole description of what occurred in the building.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready? Commissioner Lundquist, did you want to go ahead and make a motion?
Move that we adopt and endorse a letter stating our approval of the preservation efforts with the addition of language in the form of a plaque commemorating the cultural significance of this property before it's torn down.
Do I have a second? Mr. Birdman, seconds. Can I please get a roll call vote?
Commissioner Lundquist.
Aye.
Commissioner Pollak.
Aye.
Commissioner Cundy.
Present.
Commissioner Birdman.
Aye.
Yep, okay. Commissioner Nemo.
Aye.
Commissioner Everson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstad.
Aye.
Chair Schilling.
Aye. Okay, motion has been passed. Thank you for the presentation, Stephanie, and we're going to move on to the next thing.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, next item on our agenda is a certificate of appropriateness for 4630 Drexel Avenue. Emily, can you share your screen and we can look at the details?
Let me get this all set up here. Sorry. Are you guys seeing the PowerPoint screen now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Okay, so the subject property is 4630 Drexel and is located on the northwest corner of Drexel and Country Club Road. The existing home was built in 1924 and is in Mediterranean style. Tonight, the certificate of appropriateness request includes the addition that is visible from Country Club Road, Wooddale Lane, and Drexel Avenue, and that also includes changes to the street-facing facade off of Drexel. The proposed project would also require a variance from the Planning Commission. The proposed addition requires a 15-foot rear yard setback variance from the 25-foot rear yard setback requirement. The variance request is scheduled to be heard by the Planning Commission at the September 23rd Planning Commission meeting. Let's see. The proposed additions would be visible, like I said, from both street facades of the subject property, which is the reason why the proposed project requires a certificate of appropriateness. The Country Club District Plan of Treatment recommends rehabilitation as the most appropriate treatment for historic homes in the Country Club District. As always, we had consultant Vogel review the proposed plans, and he has stated that based on the plans presented, the proposed additions and alterations appear to meet the general standards for rehabilitation projects that is referenced in the Country Club Plan of Treatment. The new construction has been designed to be compatible with the original house and is consistent with the size, scale, and massing of the historic homes in the neighborhood. If the additions were to be removed in the future, they would still leave the essential form and integrity of the proposed or the existing structure unimpaired. And he believes that no primary historic character defining colonial or revival style or any feature would be removed with the changes to the street facing facades. And he doesn't believe that the proposed changes affect the property's historic character or adversely affect the neighborhood. So with that, staff agrees with the consultant Vogel's evaluation of the proposed plans for 4630 Drexel and also recommend approval of the COA request. The recommendation or the condition that staff included is that any changes to the proposed plans would require review again by the Heritage Preservation Commission. So you can see here on the survey, the outline, the dashed outline is the proposed addition that was specifically to the point with the rear yard setback variance. It goes through all of the elevations of the proposed addition. They're also proposing to include an entryway addition, a small entryway addition that was discussed during the sketch plan review. As you may remember, the HPC did review another certificate of appropriateness request for this address back in 2019, and the applicant did include elevations from what was approved at that point in time versus what is proposed tonight. So with that, I will leave it to open to any questions, and the applicant and the homeowners or property owners are on the line tonight and can answer any questions as well.
Do I have any questions, comments? Go ahead, Commissioner Hostetler.
Hi there. It looks like you brought back that awning over the front door. Is that correct?
Scott, can you hear us?
Can you hear me there?
Yes, now we can.
Yes, we did. We reduced that to, it was 8 feet, an 8-foot extension. We brought that back to 4 feet based on that feedback from the sketch plan review, just to give it a little more subtle look.
Yeah, I think that's a great improvement, and I'm really excited about this project.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Lundquist.
I would echo both of those sentiments. I like that change. I'm excited about the project. It's even better for the neighborhood than the first COA, so which is wonderful. 2 clarifications, and I did listen in on the meeting I missed, but with the reduced porch size, just confirming that that is well within the setback of the homes to the north. I believe your architect said, can I just?
Yes, yeah. It's still considerably behind the setback of the adjacent
Want to get clarification on those.
Yes, it's well behind the allowable setback. Just so to maintain the streetscape. The house to the, if you're familiar with, there's a house to the north has almost like an undeveloped lot next to it. But this definitely pulls back from the front setback. It could actually come forward almost like 12 feet.
Great.
We're only about, we're 4 feet, so about 8 feet behind the front setback.
Great. Good. The the main thing I wanted to dig into, I'll absolutely vote to approve this, but the one condition I want to explore and get others' input on was the material of the roof. And going back to the language of the Secretary of the Interior standards and so on, it talks about, you know, preserving those really key historic materials. And to me, that Spanish tile is one. So I wanted to ask, will the original tile be left on the main portion of the building and an additional tile be used on the side additions? Or are you planning to remove the existing historic tile from the roof, just given the nature of the build?
Yes, I can answer that question. So the style that the client is looking for in this home is reflected in the materials. It's a fine texture stucco, you know, with a light color, pretty similar to what's there right now. And then a black detail on the window grids, whereas today I think it's green on the current home. And then a black roof to give that overall look of that black accent. So yeah, the roof right now is a green tile.
Right.
And so yes, we would be removing that. And we're actually, the client has a contract with Better Futures Minnesota. That's a charity that employs young men and women getting back on their feet, and they donate that material. They sell it to be reused on other homes, and then it gets reused versus just having it thrown into a landfill.
Which I very much applaud, and also love how they've been maintaining the yard so carefully. I would just add, in a normal, if it wasn't a corner lot, and by the way, your documentation of corner lots was very helpful. If it weren't a corner lot, I think we as a group would want to see that historic tile maintained, as other, like the house to the north did, and put a complementary tile next. Since that's not the plan, I would propose that we put a condition that the asphalt tile, which is listed as a possible material, be not allowed, and encourage use of the Brava or the Decra or one of the other tiles, because that's such a distinguishing feature. And I know Consultant Bogle, his recommendation, but I do feel that Spanish tile is truly a critical piece of that home. So that's the condition I would propose, and I'll be quiet and listen to the other commissioners' thoughts.
Thank you for that feedback.
Do I have any other commissioners with thoughts, or Commissioner Birdman?
I do. I just want to, again, sort of, this has gone through a lot of process now over a couple of different parts of the group. And I just think that I think we found the right solution, I guess, is what I'm saying, is that, you know, I think there was a lot of distance between where it started and where we're now ending up. And I think it really goes to the heart of the process that we have, but also for the homeowners and the builders and the architects, whatever, is really trying to work through what we want to have here. I have no doubt in my mind that once this is done, that this will become another jewel within the country club district, given its location and its design. And I think it will really be a valued added to the district. So I'm very pleased with how this process has gone. I think it's a good lesson, not only for us older people on the board, but I think for all of our newer people. If you really look at how this played out, I think we did our job right. And I think we had a willing participant who was willing to take our guidance and come up with a project that hopefully everyone could be happy with. So I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other, go ahead, Commissioner Pollack.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, thinking about what Jane said, you know, and looking at these depictions we have in front of us, in my mind, you know, I looked at those and I see those as having that tile on the roof, right? Not an asphalt roof. And, you know, looking at it again, if it was asphalt, it would significantly, I guess, change, you know, just the aesthetics and how that would fit within the district. So I support that that condition of you know, ensuring that roof is not an asphalt roof. I think that would very much change, I think, my interpretation of what we have in front of us.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can dictate roofing materials.
Of course you can.
You can, yeah. I don't think we're necessarily dictating that they have to pick a singular option, but I think what Jane's sort of recommendation for the motion is to explicitly say that the asphalt is not in keeping with the look and feel that we're approving. And that is absolutely well within our powers.
Then I'm very supportive of Commissioner Lodquist's proposal.
Agreed.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sarah, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, a departure. I second or third kind of the comment of the roof tiles. I do feel like in this context, I would strongly, I guess, support those being clay tiles. I want to just, I guess, question the landscape plan. I think just with the garage facing kind of the, Spaghetti Junction or whatever, the kind of to Country Club, that I do feel like those trees that are shown in plan and in the renderings are important to kind of screen that attached garage. So, is there a way to kind of propose a landscape or, I guess tie that into the plan, or I guess I forget how we look at landscape plans. I know for new homes, we look at them. For remodels, I guess, less clear to me.
I think that you guys could comment on that landscaping, especially because of that came up in conversation with the garage location. It was discussed at the sketch plan review. I think the intent, based on what we've heard at the sketch plan, is that they do intend to include those plantings along the driveway to help shield the garage as well as headlights. But I do think that is something that you guys can comment on.
Okay. And certainly I apologize, I was not at the interview, but I feel like it would be kind of tie into the kind of the roof tile comment that I believe that the trees lining the driveway and somewhat kind of screen the garage are critical in my mind.
Actually, I have a question for Emily on that to follow up on that. On the streetscape itself on the curve, which is technically city property, not the homeowner's property, but is the homeowner responsible for the actual foliage right there on the curb itself? I can understand on the north side of the sidewalk going onto the property itself, but the one between the sidewalk and the curb, I've never actually thought of this question before. Does the city have any responsibility for the native forest, if you will, or is it all the individual homeowner?
Are you talking about boulevard trees that are planted in between the sidewalk and the street?
Yeah.
So that's something that I would have to talk to the streets department on who's responsible. But I think Sarah was talking about the trees shown on the driveway.
I was trying to kind of augment one of the things that Sarah was saying. I get on the property itself what she's talking about, but if you actually look on it where the driveway is not going to go through, there's really not any boulevard trees that are kind of there as well. That would be another way you could also address Sarah's concern. The question was, does the city have any obligation to that versus the homeowner or whatever? I was trying to figure out where that would fall, because that would give you some additional options since you already have boulevard trees there, but I don't know if the sketch plan is accurate. But if there aren't any trees along those, but maybe there's an opportunity to help do that would help minimize some of the things that Sarah was just referring to. Just a thought.
Chair Schilling, Commissioner Cundy, if I can.
Go for it. Yep.
So the beauty of the boulevard strip in the district is that we as homeowners are responsible for it, but the city gets to tell us what we can or can't do, and they can fine you for your behavior with respect to it. So it's one of those beautiful arrangements. I have a couple of thoughts. So one, really appreciate the reduced scale of that overhang or kind of portico space with respect to the entrance off of Drexel, the main entrance of the home. That was for sure going to be a sticking point for me personally, and so I appreciate the scale there. I don't know, Emily, if we need to put as a condition that that depth remains as it is in these plans, or whether the fact that we're approving plans that show that as it is now, that necessitates that that's what's built. So just kind of a tidying up question there, but I really like what I saw in the pictures. I would echo the feedback regarding the landscaping and kind of the curved driveway, given the location of the garage within the district, and that it, this home kind of currently serves and will serve as the the principal property that people see when they're entering the district. I would go a step further and say that I think that having the two individual garage doors, as opposed to a single double wide or perhaps even extra wide garage door, does that, and even in a more permanent way. I think when we talked about this property at the last meeting, we asked about the landscaping and talked about the fact that nothing would stop someone 5 years from now from removing all of the landscaping. Typically those types of changes and rerouting the driveway wouldn't be something that would come forward to this group, whereas making sure that the garage doors were two individual doors as opposed to one big one would be a change that this commission could require, and that would be long lasting. So I would for sure support the landscaping kind of requirement. I would add to it that those two garage doors remain two separate doors as opposed to one. Not sure if that's something that the homeowners are fully committed to, or if there's feedback on that as well. A couple other points. Number one, agree with the roof selection conversation and the caveat Commissioner Longquist added. And then my last question for the group, just so that we're being consistent and fair, and I think maybe the answer is that this is technically a side yard as opposed to a front facing aspect. This plan has a second story terrace with what appears to be a fireplace and seating area. And we just talked about on the Edgebrook property that historically the committee has not wanted to encourage and wanted to be very explicit about the kind of non-occupancy of the front porch on the Edgebrook property. And I'm just hoping someone can articulate to me why that is different on this property. And again, I suspect it's because we're actually talking about a side view, but they're very similar, and I think we should be able to explain our reasoning as to why we're viewing that differently. So sorry for all of those things being piled together, but those are my thoughts. I really like the plan. I'm excited about the project as well.
You are correct. It's because it's a side. That was one of the hardest parts about this project when it first came before us, is that the front of the house is on Drexel, technically, based on the survey and how the property is listed on the county map or whatever. And so technically it's a side yard, not a front yard. But because it's still, it's viewable from the other street, there's some preview there. I think it would be disadvantageous to any corner lot if we treated two full sides of it as a front-facing facade and we applied the rubric that you just described across all of that. I don't think that's what's happened in the past, and so therefore, while I agree that it could raise a potential question, the reality is that with the way setbacks work, where they have a side setback on that side, not a front setback. And so it goes to the plan of that's why you'd be able to allow that in this particular case. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's, I think, the letter of the law about how that would be viewed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jane.
I definitely
Two thoughts on that. One is that the plan of treatment actually uses the phrase historic facades and streetscapes. I think a lot of us have projected the language street facing facade, and that's not, so that's something we can revisit. But there are two streetscapes here. To me, Bob, getting to your question, the reason why I think this porch works and the other doesn't is, number one, the Mediterranean style of the house, which was having more access to outdoor spaces and the Mediterranean style. And also it's on the side. To me, it reads like an airing porch that my Spanish colonial house has over the porch, and that faces the street. So to me, it's consistent. Whereas with the colonial over the front door, that felt a little modern. And so the architects can answer better than I, but I think that's fine. And quickly, Bob, to your other point, I think adding landscaping is great. I know as far as streetscapes, boulevard trees were a huge part of Thorpe's design, but we haven't, I don't believe as this group, and certainly within the district, dictated that people add boulevard trees. I think it's highly encouraged. And I think knowing the cares that these homeowners and builder living in the district, I think we can trust them. I wouldn't elevate landscaping personally to the level of a condition. Unless others may feel differently. I think it's important to raise that to the extent we can shield and screen the garage and soften with vegetation, great. But to me, I don't think it's important that we add a condition there.
Anyone else?
Oh, sorry if I can just
Nope.
respond quickly.
Go ahead.
If that's all right. I agree about the porch or the second level terrace. I just wanted to make sure that we were all articulating that so that someone who looked back on the meeting wouldn't say, why did you care in one instance and why not in another? I think we're all getting used to this corner lot concept, but certainly others who might be interested but aren't as in the details might not have picked up on that. Commissioner Lundquist, what are your thoughts on the garage 2-stall versus 1-stall? Understanding you're kind of hearing your thoughts on the landscaping, but what do you think about that aspect?
Well, my assumption is that we're voting to approve the plans as submitted. And so I don't think that's a detail we need to worry about. I share your enthusiasm for the 2-stall approach. I think that's one reason we're all so enthused about this plan, but I don't think we need to dictate that. They'll build what is submitted and we're going to approve.
That's correct. I'll reiterate that if for whatever reason it came to a building permit and the elevation showed one double garage door, that would trigger it coming back to the Heritage Preservation Commission for a review.
Thanks, Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are we ready to make a motion to approve with a condition? Go ahead, Commissioner Bergman.
I would so move. I'm sorry, Rachel, if you want to go ahead. That I would move to approve the plans as submitted with the caveat that Commissioner Lundquist added that I've all of a sudden I got distracted.
The asphalt roofing is not.
Yes, that the asphalt roofing is not allowable under this plan approval. The other Spanish tile or tile type would be acceptable based on what's been provided to us on the options that are there. Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, Emily, can we get a roll call vote for the approval of the COA based on that condition on the roofing materials?
Yes. Commissioner Lundquist.
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock.
Aye.
Commissioner Cundy.
Aye.
Commissioner Birdman.
Aye.
Commissioner Nemo.
Aye.
Commissioner Everson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstad.
Aye.
Chair Schilling.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everyone. That COA is approved. As a note, Emily, talk about the time frame and the next steps after the COA is approved.
Yes, there is a 10-day appeal period. So after the 10-day appeal period, planning would be able to sign off on a building permit as long as the elevations that are submitted match what was approved with the COA.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, the next order for us to take a look at is the finalization of our Heritage Preservation Commission work plan. And Emily, if you could share your screen and let us take a look at that.
Okay, so I have attached the latest or final draft of the 2021 work plan of the Heritage Preservation Commission. I've included the leads that we've discussed at previous meetings. I've also included or updated some of the staff report or staff support that's required with each item, as well as liaison comments things that I have commented on that will be presented when the work plans are presented to City Council. You may or may have not noticed I've changed the order of the initiatives because they've asked that we kind of order them into, I don't want to say importance because they're all important, but I kind of did it as what we do the most, like reviewing certificates of appropriateness, and kind of went from there. So if you guys have any comments or see any changes, but I'm hoping that tonight the HPC will approve the work plan, and that way I can submit it to MJ. They're due on September 25th. October 6th is the work session where Annie and I will attend the City Council work session, and Annie will present the HPC work plan to the City Council. From there, in November, the City Manager presents to staff with any revisions, and that let's see, the December 1st council meeting is when they would be reviewed officially by City Council. And then obviously January 2021 is when they would go into effect at that time.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Did everyone have a chance to review this? And do we have any revisions or concerns, questions?
I know we had a couple people not at the last meeting, so if you guys want to add yourselves to anything, or if I missed any of the people who wanted to volunteer at each item, please let me know.
Otherwise, if we don't have any comments, questions, we can make a motion to approve this as Emily is presenting it.
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Birdman has moved that we approve this. Do I have a second?
Second.
Emily, can we get a roll call vote on approval of this work plan as submitted?
Yes. Commissioner Lundquist?
Aye.
Commissioner Pollak?
Aye.
Commissioner Cundy?
Aye.
Commissioner Birdman?
Aye.
Commissioner Whitmire, she's gone. Commissioner Nemo?
Aye.
Commissioner Everson?
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstad?
Aye.
Chair Schilling?
Aye. Great. I'm really excited about this work plan, and what I'm most excited about is all the energy behind participation. So thanks everybody for that. Okay, next is our biographical sketch of Thorpe. And this is a supplemental, I'm forgetting your wording, Emily, a supplemental portion of our understanding of the Country Club Historic District.
Yep, it'll be kind of a supplementary context statement that will be included with the documentation of the Country Club District when it was established as a historic neighborhood or as an historic district. And Robert can touch a little bit to that if he wants to elaborate on that a little bit more. But if you guys remember, I believe it was back in June, I believe, is when we saw this for the first time, and we had some public comment on it. And so what we did then is that we asked Robert to review that public comment that we had received and make any edits. So this is Robert's response to that, or edits to those comments, to incorporate some of those comments. I've sent it to Heidi Lee. the city's race and equity coordinator. I have not received any comments on it to date. I sent that to her about 2 weeks ago, so I have not heard anything. But with the assumption that everything is, she had no comment on that, it's in front of you tonight.
Robert, did you want to comment on this at all?
No, actually, this is just something we need to add to our file, essentially, because there's actually very little biographical information about Mr. Thorpe in the National Register nomination, which forms the basis for the landmark district. And rather than constantly repeat this exercise, maybe we just sort of put it in the city's official record. We move on to other things.
Well, I
Okay,
just
do I have any commissioners with questions or concerns? Go ahead, Commissioner Pollak.
Oh, no, I was just only going to comment that I think that, well, I don't remember the exact wording that was in there from related to the covenants and all that sort of stuff. I do like the long paragraph that really covers that section of it. I think it does a very nice historical, without bias one way or the other. It basically states the facts of that the redlining was actually done in the country club and so on. I know that was one of the big issues about the public comment that we had. We wanted to make sure that reflected accordingly. I thought that was well done. After rereading it again just a few minutes ago, I think that gets to the heart of what was going on. It doesn't give a judgment one way or the other, but it makes sure it's clear as part of the historical record that was indeed factual. And notwithstanding what Robert told us before, that this wasn't just something that was done in the country club, it was done everywhere. Doesn't minimize it any further than the fact that it still was done as part of standard operating procedure during this period of time. And I think that's an important element. So I appreciate that.
Perfect. Commissioner Pollak, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was a lot of feedback when we were talking. So this we have in front of us reflects, obviously what Robert wrote reflects the public comments that we had received, and then specific to this section about the restrictive covenants, where did the changed language come from? Who was the author?
The author, all of the data that's presented in that essay comes from the sources cited in the references.
Robert wrote the edits.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Yes. There's a line in there that acknowledges that if there's mistakes, they're mine. I think that's right up at the top.
Go ahead, Jane.
I just want to also thank Consultant Vogel for adding that important and carefully researched context. It's a great addition. And in addition to having it on file, I think I'm going to try to find ways to share it within the district. There's a free neighborhood magazine that's always hungry for content, so we'll get this out there too. I move that we approve this amended, expanded edition of his report.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, Emily, can we get a roll call vote on accepting this amended biography of Samuel Thorpe?
Yes. Commissioner Lundquist?
Aye.
Commissioner Pollak?
Aye.
Commissioner Cundy?
Aye.
Commissioner Birdman?
Aye.
Commissioner Nemo?
Aye.
Commissioner Everson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rosenstein?
Aye.
Chair Schilling?
Aye. Very good. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Consultant Vogel, for the work on that. Speaking of Consultant Vogel, our next order of business is a presentation. Robert has put together some sort of basic training for us over the next few meetings, and he has a few minutes of information to share with us. So Robert, you're up.
All right. Well, thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. Yes, for 20 years now, I've been responsible for training the Heritage Preservation Commission. I think it's item number 10 in my annual contract. But each year, I swear, we do it differently than any previous year. Ordinarily, we attempt to provide you with a kind of a workshop, informal orientation, usually early in the spring when the new members come on board. We were defeated in our ideas for that this time around as you got involved with other things. So we're doing it a little late, and we're going to probably stretch it out over 5 months and focus on a different aspect of what it is you are here to do. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit tonight was just to tell you some of the really basic things. Hopefully it's not, well, actually it should be new to some of you, but should be very old for some of you, like Michael Birdman, for example, who's probably heard it all too many times. But we've also provided you with, there is no real primer on how to do a Heritage Preservation Commissioner's job, but the state has prepared a training manual, which at 190 some pages, I would sure hope would train you to do something. I can't say I recommend it unless you really suffer from insomnia. But we also provided you with one of the great publications in historic preservation. It's National Register Bulletin 24. It's called Guidelines for Local Surveys. It's published in 1977, and it is still, if you had to drop in, you know, out of the blue into a place and say, and somebody told you to organize a municipal heritage preservation program, this would be the guide to doing it. It's quite useful. We wear copies out in my office here. And you can download it from National Park Service's website. It's one of the very few National Register bulletins that was never digitized. So it's a kind of a crummy copy. You can write the Park Service and they'll send you, they must have printed 10 millions of these things when it was originally released. But it's a wonderful guide to what it is that we do. The Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office, who is your partner in preservation, their website has a page called Local Preservation, which has some relevant information to people, especially who are just getting acquainted with the historic preservation business. And then, of course, the Park Services at nps.gov have more or less, depending on, I mean, they redo their website, it seems, every 6 months, but right now there is quite a bit of information on there. But basically what I wanted to get across tonight is that what your basic job is. Also, there's a FAQ that we put together, and I think all of you got when you were appointed, that explains or gives short answers to some of the most frequently asked questions about what it is the City Preservation Program attempts to do. The Preservation Commission's been around for a long time. It was created in 1974 as the Heritage Preservation Board, and it was back in the 1970s, those of us who were in government kind of took it as truth that commissions were the higher level of government, and that boards were kind of subcommittees of them, and that you had more flexibility as a board than you did as a commission. And actually, that thinking has completely switched 180 degrees in the 40 years since then. In 2018, the city made all of the boards and committees commissions. So there's nothing interesting about that other than the changing semantics, I suspect. The program is administered by the City Planning Department, which is quite common. There's about 4,000 municipalities who do historic preservation, and I would bet that on any given morning, 3/4 of them are being overseen by the city's planning or community development departments. Although it doesn't have to be there. Let's see, the city's been a participant in the federal preservation program since 1993. And I was dying to tell you this earlier during that kind of fractured version of the Section 106 process. But one of your obligations as a certified local government is to actually enforce Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And unfortunately, you cannot enforce it unless somebody tells you they're doing a project that falls under that. That is a federal undertaking. And so when that simple call at the beginning isn't made by, in this case, HUD, you miss your opportunity and you end up playing catch up. I think we arrived at a plausible and passable solution to the studio issue. But so that's one of the things that you have some role in. But you have like 3 essential functions that if you don't do them, no one else will. One is you provide the forum for public participation in the city's preservation program. And that's important. Function number 2 is that you add properties to the inventory of heritage resources that are worthy of preservation. In other words, you're the ones who suggest the properties that we add to the list of things that appear to be eligible for designation as Edina Heritage Landmarks. And you do that. We'll talk about how that process works. But only you can actually tell us to put them on the list. And then the third essential function is you are the only people on the planet Earth who can actually nominate a property to be designated or rezoned as a heritage landmark or landmark district. And the city council is the only group that actually has the authority to pull the final trigger on that. In other words, you can nominate, but the council has to hold the public hearings and they have to, by majority vote, actually rezone each property one at a time as you submit them to them. So those are really important things. And the kind of cool thing about Edina's program is that the city council has really delegated to you and you alone almost sole responsibility for actually the regulatory part of the City Heritage Landmarks program. I think that's a double-edged sword for you folks because it means you spend most of your public meetings actually doing regulation, which is one of, in the big picture, is one of the least important things you're charged with doing. It just takes longer, time-wise, for you to go through. And it seems like it could also be the most controversial, although it turns out not to be. The qualifications were discussed with you when you interviewed for the appointment, but really what the council looks for is good citizens who will show up and do the people's work. You serve at their pleasure. You're public officials, but the important thing to remember is nobody expects you to be experts at this. The city pays experts to advise you. They pay Miss Emily to make sure the program is administered properly and that we follow all the applicable laws and procedures. And they pay me to be the credentialed historian, architectural historian, and archaeologist for the city. So you don't have to actually know anything about this to be good at it. You do have to pay attention. And if you read National Register Bulletin 24, you'll know more than an awful lot of people who are in the business. So we don't want you to be shy about some kind of perceived lack of competence. And then I'd like to close so you can move on to the rest of your agenda here. But the things you need to keep a mind of, although you don't need to have them at arm's length all the time, is that, there is a body of law that applies to what you do. The city's preservation ordinance is the city's legislative statement of what you're supposed to do. Minnesota has enabled municipalities to create heritage preservation commissions since 1971. So Edina is actually one of the older ones. And there's a chapter in the city code. Actually, it's in chapter 2. Used to be section 184. I don't know what it is under the new, but that actually discusses the legal authority for creating the Heritage Preservation Commission. And then the regulations pertaining to Edina heritage landmarks are in the zoning code, which is I think it's chapter 36 of the city code. And there's a line in it's in section 2, 189 actually, that the city, as a matter of law, has said that they will provide you with professional staff. You're one of very few cities that actually does that. In fact, of Minnesota's 60 or so heritage preservations, fewer than 10 of them have any professional staff at all. And you're the only small city, anything under 100,000, that actually has a professional land use planner and a professional historic preservation person. Year round, you don't have to get sued before the consultants show up, which I hope makes you feel more confident. And then finally, there's a kind of an owner's manual for the city's preservation program, and it's in the city's comprehensive plan. It's chapter 13 that deals with heritage preservation. And we renew this and revise it every 10 years. This is the third generation plan that you can see now, but that really gives you the, how the city expects things to be done. And it lays out a roadmap for how we're going to improve the program in the next 10 to 20 years. But it also explains how all of the different parts of the program need to work together. There's essentially 6 components. Planning, which we'll talk about at the next month's regular meeting, and concluding with education, which it looks like we'll get to in January. But you need to do all of those things to be successful, and you need to do them all at the same time. That's the real challenge to doing this. But I think between NRB 24 and Chapter 13 of the comp plan, I mean, if you really want to come prepared to meetings, those are the 2 resources you need to gain some mastery over, at least in the long term. So I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to the really fun parts of historic preservation sooner rather than later. But hopefully this whetted your appetite.
Thank you, Robert. Does anyone have a question for Robert? I still think that we need to have like an open mic night or anything, because he's full of great information and it's super interesting.
Well, traditionally, when I started out in this business in the 70s, heritage preservation commissions, there were only about 150 in the United States, and there were only about 20 of us who claimed to be consultants in that field. But they traditionally met twice a month. They had one meeting to do the regulatory stuff because that involved a lot of the public. But then they had a second meeting where it was mostly interaction between the staff and the individual commissioners who, I mean, this issue of people coming and going off a commission has been a problem for historic preservation commissions since the very beginning. Unfortunately, as people's lives get busier, cities have kind of dropped the twice monthly meetings. And So it is a little hard sometimes to squeeze everything in. But somebody here answers the telephone every day, and I get most of my email anyway. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to just call or email or however else you want to get in touch with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
About more.
Right. We will look forward to next month's installment. All right. So if we don't have any more questions or comments there, we'll thank Consultant Vogel. Thank you very much. And we will move on to chair and member comments. And it looks like we've got Commissioner Lundquist with some prepared comments. So go ahead, Commissioner Lundquist.
Yeah, I just wanted to put a bookmark in a theme that I sort of have brought up in past comments, and that is an inventory of contributing and non-contributing resources in Country Club, and we're not prioritizing it on the upcoming work plan, and that's great. I'm excited about what we're doing, but the reason I sort of captured my thoughts and data and shared it with all of you is just to go on record saying that in the plan of treatment, the very last item is that each 10 years we'll resurvey the district, which Consultant Vogel just did, but it says that we will revise the list of heritage preservation resources and non. And by Robert's admission, he did a different style of survey, and he also spent some time with the history that we talked about, but we don't have this list. We have it in partial form, and Emily shared that last week of homes that are new construction. And that list, her list is around 42 properties. Robert mentions 46, but there are 67 that aren't contributing. So whether it's in 2028 when we do our next survey, or whether it's in ongoing work, I just wanted to go on record saying at some point I do want to see us have that list, because the houses that aren't contributing anymore, the obvious ones is because they were built outside that period of significance, but the not so obvious ones are the ones where changes have been made that have taken away their integrity. And I do think that's important, not for public use, but just to have and to know. So those are my thoughts. I'm happy to hear reactions. If it's too late in the night, I just would have it go in the public record that I just want to see at some point that we follow that list, that we say we're going to make a list, an inventory, and at some point we do so. Right now it's paper files and various lists, but we'll get there.
Thank you, Jane, for your work and energy around this. Does anyone have question, comment?
Well, I have a comment, if that's okay.
Please, yes.
In 2010, at the joint meeting between the Heritage Preservation Board and the City Council reviewed the results, I guess, of the 2008 resurvey, and they explicitly and emphatically informed the board that they did not want to actually have a public list of contributing versus non-contributing properties. What they directed me to do was to, every time we had a permit to process for a certificate of appropriateness, to evaluate the house that was before you and make a determination, was it contributing or was it non-contributing? So every single COA, actually every COA the city has ever approved, includes a report from me that says the property is, well, we haven't run into one yet that was individually eligible as per a landmark, but whether they contribute or not contribute. And that's what the council thought would be, rather than have something out there where we would have to spend time responding to whoever saw it, why a particular house was considered not historic enough, apparently. And that's why. So it's a cosmetic, it's a very unusual way to do this. In fact, most textbooks about historic preservation tell you to do the exact opposite, to look at everything, declare which ones are eligible, which ones are not, which ones contribute, which ones don't, and stick with that for time immemorial. But it does seem to work in Edina.
Yeah, well, I seem to think that you just look at the Drexel project that we just did tonight, right? It's contributing in the sense of it's in the period of significance that it was originally built, right? But no one would say in its current condition, is it actually contributing to the value of the country club? The question is then going to become, is this new project that's going to happen with it, could something that technically the original was contributing because it's in the period of significance, it's kind of fallen out of because of disrepair, whatever it is, you then redo it or you add to it, remodel it as they're going to do in this situation, and then does it kind of then gain some level of contribution back? Not because it was built in 1928 or whatever it was, but because yes, it has those elements, but that as a newer home or a remodeled home, it becomes another definition of contributing to the district. I think that I always think we get so stuck in just one particular period of time. And I know that's what the plan treatment says, but I'm always wondering as to, don't these things evolve to where if you had a home that was redone, but it was redone so beautifully, and we've all seen projects that we've all liked, they're like, wow, that is really phenomenal. Well, in 30 years' time, would we want someone to do something to that? Or would we want to maintain that?
The problem with that is history only happened once. And the buildings in the district became significant because they were part of the developer's original plan. It's the plan of the developer, Mr. Thorpe, that actually makes the district significant, not the architecture of the individual houses. They reflect, obviously, what he thought a house should look like. I wish we knew how that process actually worked between 1924 and 1936 when he died, but we don't. So things are significant because of their association with the development. What they look like is something, I mean, there were some really ugly.
That's what you said that. You said that times over the years. You've said that. It's like, well, like, or this style is like, what is that? It's like no one can even say.
Well, one of the reasons we want you folks to actually comment on all of these changes that come before you is it's inevitable that you'll imprint your tastes and sense of style and whatever you learned in architecture school for you licensed architects. And that's inevitable. There's no way we could stop that. But you have to always remember that the district is one resource with 500 and some odd parks. And the only way to make it work is to treat it like that, rather than to treat it as an agglomeration of 553 different art objects. Because you'd never be able to.
Fair enough.
You'd never be able to do what you do if you treated it as that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jane.
Robert, thank you for clarifying the city council's explicit desire, and that's something I didn't know. The plan of treatment, the same area where it talks about the survey, says that we should update the plan of treatment every once in a while and every 10 years at least. So I would just again make a note, if that's a list that we're explicitly not wanting to keep, then maybe we update that there. But I think the plan of treatment is working well, and I like how our group, and with Emily's help, can make small changes to process. So thank you for sharing that information.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions, particularly for this and her work on this? Robert, how long ago did City Council give you that directive?
Well, it was right after we finished so it was 2009, 2010.
Okay.
I mean, and they were really emphatic. And in fact, for every year afterwards when we met, but they brought it up again. Said they just didn't want to do that. there was enormous public participation in the process to designate the district. I mean, more than 80% of the residents participated in part of the process in 2002, 2003. And the council just didn't want to get bogged down in the minutiae. And they asked me if it was possible to evaluate each house one at a time when they came up. And I said, yes, because if you made me go out and look at them all again, and if I spent 20 minutes on each one, it would take the entire consultant budget for 2 years to do it. And they don't want to pay me anymore. And they wanted us to move on to other things. And I would bet money that the current council people would share that same view, just from what I know about them. Could be surprised. You can ask them, maybe. But.
Okay. Well, maybe that is something that we can revisit with City Council at some point.
Well, yes, don't you have
I'd be
a
interested.
meeting
That's
with
interesting
them?
to me. I didn't know that information either. Okay, with that, I think we have, do we have any other member comments before we move on to staff comments? Nope. Okay, Emily, do you want to comment?
Yes, I just included information about the Preserve Minnesota Conference, the State Historic Preservation Conference that's happening this year. This year it's virtual and it's free to attend. So I included information that I got in an email about the sessions that they'll be offering. And they're kind of breaking them up into there's different sessions on different days. So kind of outlines what sessions are on what days and gives the information for you to register if you'd like.
Are we required to have at least one person from the commission participate? So one of us needs to, for sure, right?
Yes, at least one person from the city of Edina, whether it's staff or commission member, needs to, based on our certified local government status. I don't know how and maybe Robert can address this too, how they're enforcing that this year with how the conference is laid out. I do plan to attend the sessions that I'm able to based on my schedule, but I also encourage at least you guys to participate if you're able to as well.
Yeah, I plan on attending as I'm able.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about getting docked for not attending this. I think if one of you attends one of the Tuesday or Thursday sessions, I think they're all on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And some of them are quite irrelevant to what goes on in Edina. So you have to, but I think if actually Emily will include who attends in her annual report to the State Historic Preservation Office. And that's about all they do for monitoring compliance with that.
So yeah, if you guys do attend a virtual session, let me know and I'll include you in that report.
Yeah, I don't know that we get brownie points, but.
Awesome. Okay, does anyone have questions? If not, we have one. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just quickly, based on conversations that we've had in the past and a conversation that I had with Jane, and I think it'll be especially important moving forward with the 2021 work plan, I do intend to create a list of everyone's email contact information so you guys can have each other's email to be in contact with work plan items. I just would like to remind everyone about the open meeting law stuff. So if you need a refresher on that, feel free to do that. But I will be sharing everyone's email contact information with you guys.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. The only bit of business at this point is for someone to move for us to adjourn this meeting, unless anyone else has a question. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Emily, can we get a roll call vote to adjourn?
Yes. Commissioner Longquist?
Aye.
Commissioner Pollak?
Aye.
Commissioner Cundy?
Aye.
Commissioner Birdman?
Aye.
Commissioner Nemo,
Aye.
Commissioner Everson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstad,
Aye.
and Chair Schilling.
Aye. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.